The first day of my trial was my birthday. I'm sitting there thinking this is the worst birthday of my life. But God tells me that next year will be the best birthday of my life. 1 year later, my daughter was born. That was my best birthday. My name is Cassandra. I was born in Brooklyn and raised in Queens. I have a brother, a sister, and a half-sister. Before prison, I was a lawyer and a licensed practical nurse. I had my law practice, but my mother always told me I shouldn't be a lawyer. I'm too gullible, and I never say no when it comes to helping others. After I split with one of my law partners, one of her old clients came in. He said he could not find my ex-partner. I felt pressure to take that client's work. I'm a very spiritual person, and I've only become more spiritual since this whole thing started. One thing I know is that God gave me a sign when I first met the client. I knew there was something off with him. I just didn't trust myself enough to recognize it. The client ended up bringing a few more housing deals. First, he brought someone he said was his mother. She was planning to bail him out of a home foreclosure, and they needed my help with the closing. All the while, he was telling me how he got into this financial mess. One of his employees in his trucking business had been driving drunk, and as a result, he lost his customers and eventually his truck too. My job was to help with the closing documents and to actually close the transaction. I ended up doing a few other transactions with him. He was planning to purchase deeds of distressed properties with partners and then fix them up before selling them. The issue was the client never fixed up the houses, and the properties went into foreclosure sooner or later. I ended up being charged as if I had done the fraud. I filled out the HUD-1 form, but the government said I didn't list all the disbursements. The thing is, it's industry practice not to list all the disbursements because there just isn't enough room. Instead, I used a disbursement sheet. They didn't let me present this evidence at trial. I kept records of all of this. I gave it all to the government. If I was running a fraud, why would I do that? I was duped, but I was duly warned. God had warned me. The government said that the companies that had arranged the loans had lost money because the mortgages were not paid. The government presented these witnesses and victims at my trial. I appealed, and my case was remanded back to the trial court. 2 years later, it was finally disclosed that the government's victims and witnesses did not actually lose money. In fact, it was finally introduced that the mortgages were sold by the victims as mortgage-backed securities years prior. This means that the companies didn't actually own the loans. They didn't experience those losses. At my sentencing hearing, I got points. Points for obstruction of justice, points for the amount of the fraud, and points for being a lawyer. I got 27 points. 27 means 7 years and 3 months in prison. I've had to wait years for all this process. I was sentenced based on $1.2 million, but they can only prove $200,000. I had my first trial in October of 2013, but it was in January of 2018 that a senior judge finally affirmed the new restitution amount. I only wish that I could see some credit for this. I am still waiting to be sentenced on the correct amount.